Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Small Business Big Voice, a workshop on driving policy change. My name is Rob Retzloff, and I am the Executive Director of the Connected Commerce Council. And I'd like to start by thanking you all for taking the time to join us today on a Tuesday afternoon. We've got a really great workshop in store for you, featuring some incredible small businesses who are going to share their experience as advocates and answer questions about how they've been involved and engaged to make their voices heard in the public policy debate. But before we get to that, I just want to share some brief background about the organization, the Connected Commerce Council, for those of you joining in the audience that might not be familiar with us. The Connected Commerce Council, also known as 3C, as you'll hear throughout the webinar today, was founded now 6 years ago, back in 2018, as an advocacy-based organization to help support digitally powered small businesses. At 3C, it is our goal to help advance the interests, education, and engagement of businesses that use digital tools and technology to scale and grow, while also ensuring business leaders have a voice in public policy issues. As an advocacy organization, we understand the challenges faced by small business leaders who often find themselves constrained by limited time and resources to engage in full-time policy debates. That's why we strive to support small businesses each and every day by providing them with the necessary tools and knowledge needed to actively participate in policy discussions with elected officials and other key stakeholders. In today's rapidly evolving digital economy, policymakers are deliberating issues and policies that could profoundly affect American small businesses. So whether you're facing rising costs due to economic issues such as inflation, regulatory hurdles, or other challenges, the team at 3C is here to help empower you with the skills needed to engage in meaningful policy debates. Which brings us to the purpose of today's webinar. I've got a poll question here that I'm going to launch, and I'll give you guys a couple of seconds here, but it's simple, yes or no. Have you ever participated in any form of advocacy for your business before? Have you engaged in advocacy for your small business? We'll give you guys just a couple of minutes here, so that way we can kind of take a look at where we're at right now. And this is great. It looks like right now, the majority of you, it's kind of mixed, but the majority of you have said no, which is fantastic. So in just a few minutes, we're going to hear from several small business advocacy and policy experts who are going to discuss why it's so important to get involved and share your stories. So in addition to that, we'll also provide an overview of what small business advocacy entails, and then we'll highlight key policy issues relevant to digitally powered small businesses like yourselves. And then we'll explore ways that you can make your voice heard in the public policy issues and debates going on with the experienced small business advocates I just talked about. So with all that being said, now is a really great time to get started on advocacy. And to help kick us off first, I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, who's going to be our MC and panel moderator. He is also the founder of 3C and is a small business owner himself, having founded a startup based in Charleston, South Carolina called Data Protocol. Please help me welcome Jake Ward.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. It's great to be here. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. These webinars, these events are always a great opportunity to bring more people into the fold and to be advocates for your business and the issues that matter to you. There's also a great opportunity for us and for the Connected Commerce Council to learn some more about what those issues look like and how you're engaging with the world. 62% of people have never engaged in advocacy. That's actually a pretty good split. It means 38% of you have. So welcome back to the table. As Rob said, I'm Jake Ward. I'm the founder of the Connected Commerce Council, and now I serve as the chairman, which means Rob does all the work and I get to take some of the credit. But I'm also a small business owner. I'm the founder of Data Protocol, as Rob said, based here in Charleston, South Carolina. So from one small business owner to the other, thank you for making time today. I know we don't have much of it. I think it's interesting that every small business origin story is unique, but our experience is shared. Much of the issues that we care about, the journey that we're on, it's somehow universal to the nature of the job. And the reason that we start our businesses, the reason that we run them, isn't the same reason we keep running them, right? Our occupation becomes sort of our vocation. We're drawn to it. And it's different, whether you started the business or you run it, or even if you just work at a small business. It's not like any other kind of job. You need to care about more things. Yeah, you need to You need to assume leadership even on the smallest things. Nothing is out of your control. Nothing is out of your hands. Nothing is someone else's problem. You need to find that capacity, and you need to be comfortable in the uncomfortable uncertainty of your day-to-day lives. I think it's remarkable, and many of you probably have had the same experience when we hire somebody that used to work at Amazon or even at a decent sized company, and they say, what's going on with the trash bags? And we say, we fill the trash bags. You take the trash out ourselves. That nothing is beneath you, but also everybody gets to be part of an executive meeting where we talk about the strategy of the company. That's the nature of small businesses. And from day one, whether you're an owner or an operator, you need to learn how to prioritize, right? You can't run from one fire to the other. You need to know the difference between urgent and important. You need to know when your top priority is something that you can influence, an outcome that you can affect. And that intersection between urgent and things you can control is where you can do the most good. And there'll always be variables beyond your control, global recessions, market prices, et cetera. But the things that you can control, that's where we need to do the most work. Public policy is one of those variables. That may seem a little strange considering what your day-to-day probably looks like. Similar to mine, I would imagine, when you're dealing with HR and operations and the things that you're building and the things that you're selling, and how do I maintain market? How do I pay the bills? So what does public policy have to do with that? But the truth is that nothing a policymaker does on Capitol Hill or in your state capital or even on a local level doesn't affect small businesses. There's no such thing as an issue that is beyond small business. Take it from a former Capitol Hill staffer. There are few people more influential in the community than a job creator, than a small business, than an advocate that is a pillar of their community. That's why you need to get involved. Those are the stakes, right? That's the value you bring to the table. But let me tell you real quick about how to get involved, and then we'll dig in a little bit about some of those issues. Small business perspective and your interests, and bringing that information to policymakers. It's not their responsibility to reach out to all of their constituents all the time to understand the issues that they face. It's their responsibility to act once they understand it. So we have an opportunity. As we speak, there are several policy issues at a state and federal level that would dramatically affect small businesses. For example, there's a privacy bill right now sort of rattling around the House of Representatives, and several state privacy bills that would make it much more expensive and harder to use data around advertising, around inventory and tracking, making it more difficult for us as small businesses to use the tools and partner with the platforms that have enabled us to advertise to our customers over the past few years. No question, we need a universal, better data privacy law, but we have a responsibility then to explain to policymakers, to members of Congress, the House and the Senate, to state attorneys general, to members in the state houses of our own states, our own homes, how these bills would affect us, right? Now, you don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be a subject matter expert to be an effective advocate in this space. What you do need to be is an expert in your own business. Nobody can tell your story better than you can. Nobody is a better advocate for the issues that matter to you. You're uniquely qualified to be in this conversation. All you need to do is step up to the table. So we'll go through some of this. We'll talk to a couple small businesses. We'll hear about some of the issues that matter. And at the end, Rob's going to work through a list of things that you can do to become an advocate on a state and federal level, including things like writing op-eds, engaging with policymakers, attending meetings, sitting down with roundtables, all of which is to give you an opportunity to raise your voice, to engage in the process and engage in the conversation. I do want to just caveat with one, we're not talking about politics, right? This is not an issue of red versus blue or Democrat versus Republican. This is public policy. This is the thing that makes laws, the things that affects our jobs, the regulations that generally we don't pay any attention to until it's far too late. And I'm telling you, as one small business owner to another, we don't want to go there. We want to get in front of every opportunity we can to have a conversation and be part of the dialogue at a state and federal level. So there'll be time for some questions at the end of the section in about 15 minutes. But to find out what we're actually talking about, I'm going to welcome in Chris Grimm. Chris is part of the RxN Group policy team. He's also the head of policy for the Connected Commerce Council, and he knows many things about many issues, many states. Chris, can I give you 30 seconds? Tell us a little bit about your portfolio for 3C and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Jake said, my name is Chris Grimm. I am a partner with the RxN Group. I always tell people I'm a policy nerd by birth and a political hack by training. And when people ask me what I do for a living, I say I'm an influencer, except instead of being on TikTok and selling shoes, I'm influencing public policy. So at the state and federal level. And for 3C, we are focused on a number of issues that are very, very relevant to small businesses. That includes data privacy, rewriting the rules of the digital economy through antitrust and competition laws, content moderation, and just regular small business issues like taxes. No one likes paying taxes, and when new ones come up that particularly impact small businesses, we are sure to let people know and try to get them involved on those issues as well.
Thank you. Welcome, Chris. You mentioned a couple of the issues that you're working on right now. What are some of the policies that Congress and state legislatures are considering that would impact the businesses that are on with us today, the digitally empowered small businesses?
Sure. I think top of that agenda, as you mentioned before earlier, Jake, is data privacy. It's been 20 years since the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, said we need Congress to do a federal national privacy bill. And in that absence, 20 states have now introduced their own version of data privacy. What does that mean? Almost no business today has customers that solely live in one state. Even if you're a traditional brick and mortar business, you likely have folks on your email list or that visit your website who are from other states. Trying to comply with multiple different privacy laws is costly, is time consuming, and does not work for small businesses. So we need a national privacy law, but we need one that's balanced. Some of these state bills have sort of overregulated data. They try to limit data collection to what is absolutely the minimum necessary for a requested product or transaction. That pretty much means that no data that you would normally collect. If you're a small business and you own a restaurant, you collect data through your reservation system or from your website on where people are located. You want to open up a new restaurant, a new location. You want to know where you have customers. You couldn't process that data from your customers for that purpose. And that's a big issue in a couple states, as well as the American Privacy Rights Act, which is currently being considered by Congress. That's probably number one, first and foremost for small businesses, because every small business is either collecting that data themselves on their customers or working with other companies like Google, like Facebook, Constant Contact, Salesforce, Shopify. All of these companies are using data to present dashboards and analytics and add value to small businesses to understand their customers and understand their audience.
I remember many years ago when we started the Connected Commerce Council, I used to tell people that there's no such thing as a not digitally empowered small business. That the way that the world works now is that every small business has to use a platform of some sort. And then that enables a high level of technological investment that pushes down price and provides access. And then the pandemic happened. And really, there's no such thing as a not digitally empowered small business anymore. Do you have any sort of words of advice for the thousands of people on the line with us today about engagement, about the value they provide as advocates in the room for these guys?
Absolutely. And Jake, you alluded to this before. Every small business is a job creator, is an economic driver in their district. Every elected official works for you, right? Like they rely on votes to secure and keep their jobs. They care about what you say. The ability for a constituent to walk in or virtually email or send a handwritten letter or make a phone call to your policymakers and say, I heard this issue is happening. Here are my concerns. that carries real weight. I've been in the room with small businesses on Capitol Hill and in state houses across the country. They listen. They care very, very deeply about what their constituents say, whether it's data privacy, whether it's, new overtime regulations, whatever the issue may be, and everything in between. They want to hear from you because they don't know what you're thinking unless you tell them, right? Being an informed and engaged citizen really, really matters. And when it comes to policy, the old expression that winners show up is probably no more true than in the policy realm. Because if you're not telling your story, if you're not sharing your point of view, someone else is, and they may not have your best interest at heart.
Speaking of predicting the future, talk to me about AI. There's a fast-moving news story that will be followed by years of discussion on Capitol Hill and in state legislatures around generative AI. What does it mean for small businesses? What are we looking at from a policy perspective?
So for small businesses in particular, I think the threat for AI is we're just starting to see so many AI-powered tools become available, accessible, and affordable for small businesses. Things like customer service chatbots, right? Things like AI to help maximize your marketing and your advertising, to help you write content. There are so many different AI-powered tools that are available now in the small business sphere, but it's still a very nascent industry, and these tools are still in very early stage. The biggest concern for small businesses is Congress or state legislatures are going to overregulate AI. They're going to overcorrect because they're bombarded with fear, right? They're bombarded with stories of deep fakes and people using AI to run extortion schemes. They hear all the bad, but they're not hearing the good. Their job is to both take the good and the bad and weigh a balanced policy that prevents the bad. No one thinks that extortion should happen, whether you use AI or not. No one supports discrimination happening, whether it's using AI to happen or not. So finding that right balance of protecting folks from the worst, but also ensuring that we don't kill this technology in the cradle and only make it available to the largest, most deep-pocketed businesses is going to be really, really important. And small businesses that aren't AI-based companies that are just using one or two tools are going to need to stand up and say, this is how this is helping my business. If you make this more expensive or harder for that company to provide me with that service, that's going to hit my bottom line as well.
Speaking of deep-pocketed big companies, there's certainly a question that we have faced for years and years about how we work closely with large platforms like Google and Amazon and Meta, but we represent and we advocate for and we give a platform to small businesses that want to engage in this process. Can you talk about how those two things work together, how the interests of large companies and small when it comes to leveraging technology align?
Absolutely. So tools that are offered from Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Shopify, all of these large technology companies provide tremendous value to small businesses because these companies are large and they're integrated and they can combine multiple tools and products into one offering to save small businesses time and money. No one on this call has the time or the resources to go out and hire lobbyists and pay for trips to Washington, D.C., or pay for travel to state capitals. The work that we do with Google and Amazon is and allowing us to hear from people like you, hear your concerns, and then give you the tools to make your voice heard. And it is your voice. You're going to hear from small business owners who've done this. They've been to Capitol Hill. They've been to their state capital. No one's telling them what to say. They are taking their own concerns and their own voice and telling their own stories. We're just able to do that and help them do that because we have the support of companies like Google and Amazon. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to do what we do.
It's great. So we've been vamping long enough. Let's get to the big thing. What do the upcoming elections mean? And do you have any predictions on who's going to win?
What do the upcoming elections mean? I'm not going to try to play prognosticator because I don't think that'll be helpful. And if I was good enough at it, I would just be betting on the outcome. Look, I think the biggest outcome or the biggest relationship is going to be between what the federal government does and what the states do. There's always a balancing act between the two. People say states are the sort of laboratory of democracy. That's where policies go to get tried out first before the federal government looks at it. If Donald Trump is reelected and there's a Republican in the White House, a Republican controlling at least one house of Congress, states are going to try to do a lot, because especially democratically controlled states are going to look at the federal government and say they're not going to be doing what they need to do to protect consumers, to protect individuals, to protect businesses. And I think we're going to see an even further glut of regulatory bills at the state level, whether it's on privacy or some of these other issues. If Vice President Harris wins election and Democrats control at least one house, there'll be a little bit less of that. Either way, data privacy is not going away, because there is a legitimate concern that we need a national privacy bill. I think that's going to continue to be the case regardless of who's in power. And until we get a national privacy bill that prevents states from doing their own, states are going to continue doing that as well. So regardless of who's in the White House or who controls Congress, these issues are not going away. Whether the focus is federal or state is probably where it's going to come down to.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we won't hold you to any of those predictions. Chris, thank you for the time. I really appreciate you joining us today. Always valuable to hear your expertise. With that, I'm going to welcome in our panelists. You've heard enough from Chris and I talking about the importance of advocacy. Let's hear from some of the advocates themselves. Michael, Philip, Andrea, you guys joining us. There we go. Camera's on. Great, great, great. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, guys. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Why don't we jump around a little bit? Philip, why don't you kick us off? 30 seconds. Where are you? What are you working on? Give me the history of the business.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Philip. I'm out of Orange County, California. I own a business called Patty's Cakes and Desserts. My mom is Patty. She started the business out of the house in 1985. She ran it out of the house until 2010, when we partnered together and moved it to a storefront. From then, we've grown to 26 employees. We've moved from one small place to a larger shop. We now do just about 50% of all of our business online, which is super helpful. We have delivery service and tons of customers that all love our desserts.
It's wonderful. And every good story starts with the beginning. So, Andrea, I know that your business goes way back.
It does. We're 76 years old. I work for a company called Rada Cutlery, and we are a manufacturer of kitchen knives. We are employing about 100 people and selling and making about 3 million knives a year, all made in the USA.
And where are you located, Andrea?
We're located in Waverly, Iowa.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, from my home state, Michael Gaffney.
Hi, I'm Michael with Seawix Candle Company. I started Seawix about 13 years ago. Last year, we made over 30,000 candles. They're all 100% soy natural candles. We have a brick and mortar. We also have a wholesale channel where we sell to about 500 stores across the country. We do a lot with Whole Foods. We make Ella Beans candles for them. We employ 6 people.
That's wonderful. Thank you guys again. I know that you're very busy running your businesses, so thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So let me throw this out. Anybody jump in. Talk to me about how you became advocates. Like, what was the issue that brought you to the table? Was it a federal meeting, a state meeting? Was there an issue that really drew your attention? Andrea, let's start with you if you don't mind.
Sure. So I was invited to a fly-in event at DC a couple of years ago, and have gone to DC 3 times now to meet with some legislators, and have really enjoyed that role. But the one that really bothered me the most, or why I got involved, was a few years back, we as a company were sued by a law firm out of California. They were suing us for not being compliant with an ADA state California law. We did not have transcripts on our videos at that time. That law firm was simply targeting small businesses that were small enough that they couldn't fight back, but big enough to pay out. And so we did end up settling for a very large sum of money. And that's always bothered me a lot. And since then, we've really pushed to be compliant on our website. And I can tell you that right now, I know we're working on it, but it's such a continuous process because of so many state laws and not having a national law.
Yeah, the sort of predatory troll behavior from those law firms to create even class action suits on a state by state basis is a real threat as small businesses go online and they have to deal with the myriad of requirements. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but that is also a cautionary tale of the privacy issues that Chris was just talking about, right? ADA is super important. It's incredibly valuable to the community at large, but we have a responsibility. Certainly, privacy is the next layer of that, where there's real ramifications at a civil and regulatory level, and that's why we need a universal policy so that everybody's aware of the law and what's going on there.
Absolutely. And this is truly just a case of one of those unintended consequences of policy that they didn't think through. They thought they were doing a great thing for ADA. I get it. It was meant to be that way. But you have those people that are out there that are reading between the lines and finding a way to take advantage of it. And they found it and they got us. And that was really my first start into, we need to be involved.
It's almost always the unintended consequences. Michael, how about you? Talk to me about how you got involved, what issue brought you to the table.
Sure. So I always thought that advocacy and politics were side by side, and I got invited to a business meetup in Washington, D.C., where I met actually Jake. And Jake and I went and we met with Senator Collins regarding some privacy issues. And I was like, when I was listening to Jake speak, I realized that it's not about politics, it's about policy. And sometimes policy gets washed into politics when they vote on party lines, or if they have their blinders on and are hearing one thing. But if you're a small business or a bigger business, you have a voice. So when I was there with Jake, I was like so inspired because Susan Collins was actually listening to us. After that, we met with her rep, and he was listening to us. He gave us about 25 minutes, which was longer than I thought he would give us. And it was just so cool to make an impression and to leave with a bunch of information and actually stay in touch with her through the last 2 years.
That's great. And Philip, what was the issue that got you involved? What was that first advocacy moment like for you?
Yeah, great question. I was, as any small business owner, got a million things going on. Inbox that just never seems to end. And somewhere I got an email that said, hey, speak up about, I honestly don't even remember what it was. But I sat there and was like, okay, I got a million things to do. What do I need to do? Right. I believe it was something about like, hey, if you don't do this part, some product that I'm using isn't going to work right. So I'm like, okay, what do I get? Fill out this form and send a letter to my senator or my congressman or something like that, right? So I checked the box, sent it off. My idea was, if I say nothing, nothing will change, right? And so here we go. From my computer, I can just send this letter and it will go into some black hole and I won't hear from it. But at least I've said something. Okay, now I got all these things to do. Let me go run over there and do it. Well, then I get a call like weeks later, and it's my local congressman's office saying, hey, he wants to meet with you on Tuesday. I'm like, I'm sorry, who? What joke is this? You're seriously? She's like, yes, I just sent you an email. I'm like, oh yeah, you did send me an email. That's you. When? Where? He's down the street. And so I went and met with my congressman, and he was a real dude, and he actually listened to me. And I was like, okay. So I sent a message. They heard it, and he actually hears what I want to say. Okay, this wasn't that bad. And now I feel like I actually helped with some direction here.
That's great. The implications of filling that out and sending it in are pretty remarkable. The metaphor I always use is that if you had a storefront and they were going to put a new stop sign directly in front of your storefront, and there was a town hall meeting to talk about that routing, you would show up, you would have that conversation. That's a variable that would directly affect your business. Mm-hmm. The same thing would happen if privacy regulation made MailChimp or Google Analytics defunct, and your whole process around the cost of acquisition and the way that you grow your business was shifted. Because when you change the math, you change the model, that affects your bottom line as much as a disruption in your traffic flow would. You'd show up to that meeting, and that's what that is. A big chunk of what the Connected Commerce does is look for small businesses that are in the right congressional district, in the right states, care about the right issues, and then ask them, do you want to get involved? And give you all the resources you need to be part of that process. Let me come right back to you though, Philip. What does that advocacy look like since then? I imagine you're spending a lot of time in smoky back rooms with lobbyists or hanging out with lawyers doing really dry meetings.
Yeah, none of the above. I mean, and to add to that too, that I left off is I'm not a political person. In fact, I put my blinders on at times. I have so much to do in front of me that there's just too much going on. So this was like a big step for me. And it just seems, once I look back, it was so simple. And to your point, it's like, no, it hasn't been smoky rooms. His office was super friendly. It's a building that I drove by all the time. I just didn't know he was in there. His staff was awesome. He actually ordered cupcakes from my bakery and came by and picked them up like a day or two later. And then, yeah, I got a chance to meet him in DC, and his office was anything but smoky, and his staff was super friendly. There's a bunch of Cal State Fullerton grads that lived out here that were out there for like a semester. And so I got to chat it up with them and talk about local stuff. And yeah, it's been anything but smoky and everything. It's been super friendly. And like, I don't know, I didn't know what to expect either, but it's been fantastic.
And Michael, your next layer of advocacy from when you and I left Colin's office, you went back to the State House in Augusta and really dug in with some policymakers.
I did. Chris and I went up to the State House and we met with 4 or 5 representatives. It was great. They're all open to listening to you, and they want to hear about your business and what you're doing, especially in your hometowns and your state, and how you're affecting the people in the community around you. And it's all positive. There's really no negativity in any of the meetings that I've been to. The one thing that we were working on was privacy. And I didn't have a chance to meet with a representative that I actually have gotten to know over the years, Holly Stover. And so when I got home that night, I was thinking about it and just kicking it around. I tried calling her, and voicemail was full. I was like, oh, I'll just send her an email. Hopefully she'll get it. I sent her a text. I didn't get any response back. So it's kind of thinking about it all night. And then the next morning I woke up and I got a message from her, an email, and it said, I heard you, I listened to you, and I understand, and I voted with you. And so that really hit home for me. And I've stayed in touch with her because I think it's important, that she understands what we're going through. She's been into my shop, my brick and mortar. And I think that if more representatives and, they come to you and they listen, I think that we'll get more done.
Well, I think it ties in with what Andrea was saying earlier, right? That's Maine bill wasn't intended to be a bad privacy bill.
No.
The unintended consequences of it would have been problematic, particularly for small businesses. It's our responsibility to help shine a light on those consequences, but also to make better bills. Like we're not trying to say no to everything. Let's write good laws.
Exactly.
Yep.
Andrea, what have you been up to? What are you working on?
What am I working on? For advocacy right now, I really think the main one that I'm most focused on is this Privacy Act, because it's the one that could have the biggest effect on my business. If they go too far with the Privacy Act and they're not providing small businesses with the data that we're used to getting right now, I'm really afraid of how we're going to reach out to customers, to new customers, to people who have already bought from us. How are we going to retarget to these people? And that will make a huge dent in our growth pattern. I liken not having data with online marketing to being in a helicopter and throwing out a handful of seeds, because you never are going to know where those seeds are going to land. It's going to be very expensive and incredibly ineffective.
Now you have a unique perspective because you're in Iowa, and the Senate Judiciary ranking former chair, longtime serving member Chuck Grassley is from Iowa. So you've had meetings with them, with their team, with their staff. If they were here, if the whole Iowa delegation was in front of you right now, what would you say to them? What issues, privacy obviously, but what perspective would you want to bring to the table for them?
Yeah, I think they really just need to understand how we're using data today. When I met with Senator Grassley, I was trying to explain to him that we're using anonymous data. We're not looking to know your name and your birthday and your social security number. We don't need all of that. We just need to be able to track you. And no, keep in mind, he's a 90-year-old gentleman, fantastic. But he kept saying, if you don't know their name, how are you going to track them? And I really didn't think that I had the time to explain cookies to him, but he was very interested in what I was saying and very receptive, but really didn't understand our business. And so that was where, that's what I was there to teach him. And it's really up to us to inform them about what they don't know, so that when they're making decisions, they're making it with us in mind.
That's right. Philip, you've got the entire delegation in front of you. What issues are you raising to them, and what are you trying to tell them?
Sure. I'm trying to tell them that being a small business owner is really hard. I feel like every year we have something new, some other headwind in front of us, whether it be additional sick laws that are passed that we need to account for, or much like Andrea, we got sued last year for ADA non-compliance on our website, which was news to me, but took a whole lot of time and money involved to not only make that disappear, but also prevent it from happening again. And so all of these headwinds, they keep coming. You got employees that are coming and going for whatever reason. There's just constant headwinds that we need some type of reprieve from that allows us to be efficient in our businesses. And digital tools, whether that be just plain simple software or online tools of anything that's on your computer that you can use to make your life easier, we need those tools as much as we've ever done before, because we need efficiencies. We cannot be doing this stuff all the time. Our business has exploded since we moved online. We can't possibly talk to every single customer and take every single order. I would have 4 times as many customer service staff as I would have, but now we just put it on the internet, and now people can check at it any time of the day and feel comfortable with that. And then we can email them and get them to buy again when we need to remind them, hey, Easter's coming up, you should probably buy something. Or, hey, remember when you bought somebody's birthday last year? You probably want to do it again this year, right? And if we had to make every phone call of that, we'd have so much staff. I would lose it, just the efficiency wouldn't be there. We wouldn't be making as much money. I couldn't pay the staff as well as I do. And so it's like, if those tools were pulled away, all that stuff would come crumbling down. So we really need those to be in place. So I would ask them simply to, hey, swing for us, right? Help us get in that better position.
I love that. We're gonna open it up to questions in just a second. So anybody who has additional questions, go ahead and throw them up on the chat, and Rob will read them out. We'll go through these. The panelists will answer them, and I'll make some stuff up if they don't have the answers. Michael, do you want to let us know what you would tell the main delegation, state and federal, if they were in front of you?
Yeah, certainly. I think we're all in the same boat. I mean, I agree with Andrea and I agree with Philip 100%. It's, we need these digital tools. Maine is very vast. I'm selling Maine. I'm selling all the way up to California. We're also selling Sweden. And if we didn't have those digital tools, we wouldn't be able to do that. And it's extremely important. So I would just invite them in. Let's sit down, look at what we're doing. How do we navigate this together so it's strong? If small business grows and it's strong, the economy gets better. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Wonderful. All right, let's answer some questions. Rob, you got something you want to drop in there for us?
Yeah, we're getting a ton of questions, which is awesome. And if any of you do have other questions, you can use the Q&A tool located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or the chat function too. So feel free to submit either way. As you think about questions to ask, I have a question for the audience. Just kind of hearing from the small businesses on what they've had to say. How likely are you to engage in small business advocacy this year? Very likely, somewhat likely, not likely at all. I know small business owners are very, very, very busy people, but just, taking a look, taking into consideration what you just heard before, just wanted to gauge kind of what you guys are thinking right now. And looks like the good news is not many people are not very likely or somewhat likely to get involved, very likely to get involved, which is fantastic. I think there was maybe a question that got messed up in the answer. So it was a trick question, I guess. But
it's a push-pull.
It's good to see that people are interested in getting involved. A couple of questions have been related to the replay of the webinar and if it's going to be available to watch. And yes, right after this is done, within the hour. We're going to send an email out to you all for your reference to take a look at the webinar, watch at your leisure. We'll also include a ton of information about 3C and ways that you can get involved. So if you have any questions that you can't think of right now during this live webinar, feel free to reach out directly to us via email, and we're more than happy to find time to chat with you and answer any questions that you might have. First question is from David, and this is kind of something that Chris alluded to earlier, but with the election coming up, what should small businesses be paying attention to? What's in store for the rest of the year? Jay, Chris, not sure if you want to take this one and expand a little bit on what you mentioned, but I know the privacy bill is probably one that is going to be around for the foreseeable future.
Chris, you want to jump in? Yeah.
I'll jump in. Election season is a great time to meet and engage with your existing representatives at the state and federal level, or who will be your representative come January at the state and federal level. There are campaign events going to be happening all the time. As a business owner, it's in your interest to go out and meet and shake hands and introduce yourself and build relationships, right? Relationships matter. Michael had a great example of his state rep that he knew. She comes into his store, he had a relationship. But going out and proactively seeking and building those relationships, I think is really, really beneficial. And campaign season is a great time to do that, because that's when folks are out and about. Some of them may knock on your door, and that's an opportunity to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this privacy issue. If you get elected, do you understand how this will impact small businesses like mine, or other issues? It's a great opportunity to get engaged and build relationships.
We are not, the Connecticut Commerce Council, and I don't think anybody on this call is in the business of telling you which party is better or worse in either direction. And I don't even think that we can do that anymore. They're like, the lines between policy and motivation have shifted so dramatically in the last 10 years that we wouldn't come anywhere close. But to Chris's point, ask the people running for office if they care about things the same way you do, and that's a good way for them to earn your vote.
100%. We're getting a lot of questions about AI, but one that I want to ask the small businesses is, what advice would you give a small business owner who feels their voice isn't being heard in policy discussions? I'll open it up to the group, and feel free to jump in and answer it.
I can jump in. I think that you just, it's when you started your business, you didn't give up. You just kept going and kept going, and you knocked on the doors. I remember when I started, I made 6 candles, and I went down to a retail shop, and she turned me away. And so I went down to the next retail shop. She turned me away, and I kept going. And now, last year we made over 33,000. So in policy, you knock on the doors, you find the right people, you navigate through it. Just, don't give up. It's your business that's affected. So, and they will listen. You'll find the right person for it. And 3C is a great resource. They'll help you out.
Thanks
I'd have
for
to say that they're open to listening to you. Like, it's, how do I phrase it? It's, if you grab their ear, they'll listen. They're your constituent, if I'm using the right word. It does feel like they're this big person. Why would they want to listen to you? Who are you? But anybody that I've met is just like, yeah, what do you have to say? Okay. And they've been super polite about it. And I'm probably, for lack of words, because it was so easy that I was like, well, why didn't I do this sooner?
Andrea, anything you want to jump in on? Okay. So a lot of questions on AI, Mark, Katerina, I think these are kind of the same question, but what regulations are coming or in place to require content created with AI to be visually identified as AI created, and by who? And then follow-up question is, any info on when the federal government plans to issue AI regulations?
I'll jump in. The federal government plans to issue AI regulations sometime between tomorrow and 2030. It could happen anytime. And the hardest part to answer about that question is what different regulations, right? The Biden administration put out some guidelines. There are a few executive orders. Some federal agencies have been putting out some guidelines and regulations on AI. States are looking at AI regulation. I think in terms of a federal law, earliest we would see anything is next year, even something as simple as requiring a watermark on AI created content. And most states are done with their legislative sessions for this year. There's only a handful that are going to be in through the second half. So again, we're not looking probably until the earliest until the beginning of next year before kind of watermark regulations would go into effect, or any broader AI regulations for that matter.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense, Chris. A lot of great questions, as I mentioned. We're also going to put together a blog post that features some of the top questions that were being asked, and we'll share that with you guys via email within the next week or so. But last question before we wrap up is, how do I find out if my member of Congress is going to be in my hometown during August recess? Jake, Chris, not sure if you have any thoughts or want to answer that one. I think social media is probably a good way to see if they're going to be around.
Social media is certainly a good way. If you're really interested, the member will also post town hall meeting schedules on their website or in the district, so you can call. Most congressional offices have 3 or 4 district offices. Any of those numbers are online. It's also campaign season, so these guys are going to be out and about, right? Any function that has voting age adults running around, they are more than likely to be there. So keep your eyes out for that. Those campaign stops are not posted on congressional websites, but they're certainly posted on the campaign site. So you can find those without too much trouble too.
Perfect. So we're coming up to close to end of the webinar right now. I've got one more poll that I'm going to launch here, but just kind of going around the horn with the small businesses. Any final thoughts, words of wisdom for the attendees joining us virtually today? Michael, we'll start with you.
Sorry, I was just reading your. I would, I would get involved. I think it's extremely important to get involved. It's easy to do. I've wrote Senator Collins afterwards, and she's actually stopped by my business. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but I think it's a great rapport to, so she knows what we're doing and I know what she's doing. And it keeps the door open for communication. So it's your business, it's your livelihood. If you're employing people, those are your family, and it's important to protect it. So get involved. Don't hesitate on it. There's no reason to. It's a great thing to do.
Andrea?
Yeah, it's actually very fun. It's very rewarding. It feels great to be making a contribution in such a positive way, and knowing that you're not only helping yourself, you're helping so many other small businesses just like you all over the country.
Philip?
Yeah, I would say jump in. It was I got a chance to go to DC and sit down with I want to say Congressman Correa's office, and it was sitting there with him and his aide, and I was just sharing my story, and the way that his aide's eyes lit up, and the way like, oh, we never thought about it that way, and that makes sense. Tell me more. What is this? She seemed so interested in my perspective and what I had to do and how it affected my business, that it was so refreshing. And to think that they didn't know any of that before I came here. And by all means, I wasn't coming up with something crazy. It was just like the simple concept that I was going like, if this didn't happen, or if this happened, would affect me these ways. And it was so eye-opening. And it was so rewarding for me to say, wow, I literally saw the sausage being made here, and I contributed to that in directing it in the way that's going to help me and all my other fellow small business owners and friends that have small business owners and so on. And so to be able to do that, whether I helped 5% or 1% or something, but to help everybody else, including myself, was one of the highlights of the last couple of years, for sure. In fact, never going on my DC trip in school, to go there to DC and actually make some change was rad, for sure. So I definitely say just jump in and go for it.
Yep, exactly. And results look pretty mixed, which is fantastic. Doing more workshops and training sessions like these are always great. We do this once a year in the summer and then maybe a couple of times throughout the year, but we'll definitely try and do another one in the fall. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We're right at time right now. So I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us for this session today. I want to thank Jake and Chris for their expertise and knowledge when it comes to the issues. And I want to extend a huge thank you to our small business advocates, Andrea, Philip, and Michael. You all are rock stars and really amazing, and really appreciate you guys taking the time to share your thoughts and perspectives with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
As I mentioned, there is going to be an email with the replay to watch on YouTube. There's also going to be a link to an advocacy toolkit. This advocacy toolkit is something that we came out with last year. It's a do-it-yourself advocacy toolkit where you can learn more about the policy issues that we just covered today and learn what you can do to get more involved. I saw a lot of questions related to, well, I'm a really busy business owner. I don't know where to begin. This is a great place for you to start. So check it out. I just dropped in the link in the chat here. That's going to be also included in the email that's going out later today. And if you know of any other small business owners, leaders, decision makers who are interested in diving into the world of advocacy, I highly encourage you to spread the word, share this toolkit with them, forward the email with them, and encourage them to learn more about these issues. I think advocacy starts with awareness and education and being in the know. It doesn't have to be going to DC like each one you guys just did this year and in years past, but I think as you embark on this advocacy journey, we want to hear from you. So if you have any thoughts, questions, or want to hop on a call to chat through anything, please let us know. Feel free to reply back to that email. Or Shanti, I don't know if you can drop in your email in the chat here. We're here to support you in every step of the way. So with that being said, I just want to again say thank you to all of you who joined us today. And a big thank you to our panelists and experts. Keep up all the great work and continue to stay in advocacy for small businesses throughout the rest of the year and years to come. So thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.